Hello. So since the actual stream cut me off ages ago with the final part of the Mass Effect playthrough, I actually thought I'd come on and give you some final thoughts on the game as I was finishing it, because I never actually got the chance to do that since it actually muted what I was saying because it was copyrighted music on in the background. So there we go. So it's only going to be a short video. It's not going to be a big one because I'm going to be streaming tonight. Going to be starting Mass Effect 2 tonight. Just a few things I wanted to go over. See, a lot of these things you can only really say in hindsight, and that you've played the game a while ago and you've come back to it. For starters, I first played this when it was 2010 when I first played Mass Effect 1. And I only played it because I got Mass Effect 2 for really cheap, and started playing it, and realised there was a lot more to the story than what I was seeing. So I went back and bought Mass Effect 1, and then the love affair begins. But I wanted to have 7 points to this video I'm going through. I'm basically going to talk about the story, how it connects together, the development of the game, what it was supposed to be before it came out, and what it actually turned into, and my closing thoughts on the game and how I think. So I honestly have to say, this is not a game that's aged very well. So I doubt I'll come back to it. Maybe one day, but there's too many things to play at the moment. And so I may not come back to it for a good long while. So the first thing I want to talk about was the template story, the BioWare template story, and this is something that BioWare do a lot. In fact, that you're a hero who's stopping an ancient evil from coming back, and you're the only person who can stop it. You're the main person. Anyone who's played Dragon Age Origins will understand that the Mass Effect stories is essentially Dragon Age in space. In terms of the main character's story, you join. You're a lone hero. A tragedy forces you into the role of the hero, and then you join an organization that's meant to protect people. You then go and you go up against the big bad. No one wants to fight the big bad in the setting. They all want to fight each other. They all want to get on with their own stuff. So it's your job to try and convince them to turn around and fight the big bad. That's on its way. Me saying that could describe either Dragon Age or Mass Effect. Yeah. So this is not a story that is something that is unique. BioWare do this a lot, and it's one of the things that I gave Mass Effect Andromeda for later on is that they stepped away from that a little bit. They went back to it in the end, in the end of that story, but at the start of the story is actually quite interesting, where it was going. But yeah, Mass Effect was BioWare's first foray into doing their own sci-fi series. So they'd been doing Knights of the Old Republic before this, and often it reads to me most of the time like, I've always said this, it means a lot, somebody's first book or somebody's first album or somebody's first movie. A director's first movie, a band's first album, a developer's first independent sci-fi game. They poured their heart and soul into Mass Effect. And originally it was supposed to be something a lot more, which is what we'll come to a bit later on. But essentially, Mass Effect, as I just said, is a template story in space. It's the BioWare template story in space. So, number 2 was the dialogue wheel. Now, this was very controversial at the time because there were lots of people who played all BioWare games before this, and instead of having a dialogue wheel, of course, you had the numbers down the bottom left-hand side, and you just select which one of your responses you wanted to make, and each response was exactly what you would say. Sometimes in Mass Effect, and they never really got over this problem, you would select something for Shepard to say, and he or she would not say what you thought they were going to say, if you know what I mean. That's the problem with them ad-libbing the dialogue wheel. If you have something saying, I don't want to do that, yeah? That's on the dialogue wheel. I don't want to do that, okay? So you select that. You go, okay, I don't want to do that. And then Shepard, says, I'm not doing that. Go and do your own quest. I'm not doing that. What the hell? And you're like, well, I didn't want to be that harsh. It just says I don't want to do that. It just says I don't want to do that. It doesn't say smash the guy's face into the console and walk away. That sort of a thing. That would happen quite a few times during the game, which is not good. And yeah, some of the choices were not right when it came to stuff like that, and that's something that was ironed out to a certain extent in later games, but in this game it was jarring at certain points to have Shepard do things that generally you didn't want him to do, or her. The quality of the voice acting in the game is extremely good for people who do not have a lot of experience fronting games. I know Jennifer Hale and Mark Meir, who play Commander Shepard, male and female respectively, they do not really... they haven't really been big stars at this point, okay? Especially Mark Meir. This is their first time heading a huge franchise, and I think they do quite well. They do quite a good job. I know Jennifer Hale's a bit more experienced in it, and so her voice actor does come across as like being far better in this game. But still, I think Mark Meir does a terrific job as Shepard, and he'll always be remembered as Shepard as going forward as well. Sorry, just having a drink of water there. So, one thing BioWare does get right in most of their games, and I'm not going to get sidetracked here talking about modern BioWare, because I will get to that, don't you worry. But the one thing they do get right in most of their games is characters. And in this game, characters are really well written, but they are boilerplate characters. So, for instance, Garrus is a cop who's always been told to do things the right way but wants to play outside the rules for a change. Liara is the awkward scientist woman who finds you, no matter who you are, finds you absolutely stunning and amazing to look at and irresistible for some reason. Ashley is the gun-toting female badass. The Vasquez from Aliens, for instance. And you got Rex, who's the mercenary, the hard-bitten mercenary. Every character in this performs to a stereotype of some form or another. One thing that BioWare does really well in this is that it never really becomes old hat, especially not on your first playthrough. In your first playthrough, you're playing with these characters and you're actually getting to know them, and you actually start to find a lot more depth to them than meets the eye. Now, the depth to them isn't the characters. The clever thing about the characters in Mass Effect is that each one is an archetype of their race. So Garrus is a Turian, and he wants to get away from the stringent rules of the Turian hierarchy. He wants to get away from always being told what to do. He even says, a good Turian soldier will follow an order even if it's a bad one. And he says he's probably a bad soldier then, because he wouldn't. So that shows his archetype. You've got Tali as well, who is probably one of the best examples of this. We know next to nothing about the Quarians. Her race. The only thing we know about the Quarians is from her. So she is literally the mouthpiece of her race, of this migrant race that lost its home world and is now in a fleet-based society that has ruined its immune system. So they need to wear these suits. I mean, all of that you get from Tali, and one of the ways that the game falls down is that certain characters act too much like mouthpieces. Like Tali, for instance, she's far too much of a mouthpiece. She doesn't have much character growth in the game, if at all. She gets a bit down one time when she's on the ship because she can't sleep. That's about it. Which is a shame. Rex, on the other hand, he's exactly the same, but Rex has a bit more depth. So Rex, in showing you the Krogan, he shows you the Krogan problems they're having with the genophage and things like that. But also you see the problems of his race from his point of view. So he's a mercenary, and he doesn't want anything to do with the Krogan anymore. He thinks they're far beyond saving, and he doesn't really change that stance throughout the entire game. Even when at the end of the game you're on Virmire and you're having to go through, getting rid of the Krogan cure for the genophage that's there, you can talk him around quite easily if you've helped him a bit. He will trust you. And that is the one thing that makes Rex go and do what he does in Mass Effect 2, which is what we'll come to later on. So I think Rex and Tali serve both exactly the same function, but I think Rex is a far stronger character in Mass Effect 1, simply because he has more dimensions to him than Tali does. Rex has motivations, he has a past, he has things that he wants to do with his life. Even if that's just getting the next score, getting the next set of credits. And he actually grows as the game goes on. Tali, on the other hand, generally stays, the Quarian. She stays as she is. And you even get to say to her afterwards, are you going to go back to the fleet after this once we're finished? And she says, oh, well, I might do, but, we'll see. I need to find something first, take back to them, that sort of thing. I'm trying to get that quest to go somewhere. If anyone in the comments can tell me if that quest goes anywhere, because she says it to you like she wants something for the Quarian fleet, and I've never been able to get her to do it, to actually get, to get something that she actually needs to take back to her fleet. But those are the archetypes for their races, and that's what characters are in Mass Effect most of the time. So, obviously Kaiden and Ashley are also archetypes. Even though they're human, they're still archetypes. They still give you a basis in the human experience in Mass Effect. They tell you, Kaiden is very, let's work with our allies. Let's be friends with everyone. I mean, I don't like the fact that they're not telling us everything, but we can't go around mistreating our allies, things like that. Whereas Ashley Williams is very much like, fuck those guys. We're humans. We can do it on our own. She's very terra firma that way. And they give you the two, combative looks at human society. And Kaiden even shows you what it's like for human biotics most of the time. When they get migraines and they have debilitating illnesses and things like that. So, every single person in this game serves a foundation. Every single character in the game serves a foundation. Maybe not Joker, but that's probably the only one who doesn't. Everyone else serves a foundation. They ground you in the setting, they ground you in the races that they're portraying, they ground you in the societies that they're representing. And so when you come to Mass Effect 2, you already have that background knowledge. Mass Effect as a game, the way it's written, is essentially a primer for the setting. It's one big codex entry. Everyone explaining to you. I mean, there's even a joke in Mass Effect 3 when they're in an elevator, they're in a lift, and Garrus says, "Does anyone want to talk about their cultures or anything like that?" No? Okay, just me? Alright, fine. That sort of a thing, because it was so obvious that's what was happening in the first game. So, even though some people can see that as a negative, I actually see that as a positive. They're grounding you in the setting, and if you've played this game the first time, it's fantastic the way that you go through it. Fourth thing I wanted to talk about was the pacing. Content seems to get lost in this game. When I say content seems to get lost, I don't mean there's a bug and it doesn't appear. What I mean by that is that when you're actually playing the game, it's built in a way that you can actually go through the game in about 12 to 13 hours. Yeah? And you can not touch any of the side content, because the game doesn't really give you any of the side content. You have to go out and find the side content. Now, I actually quite like that, but I think games should have side quests, and they should have quests that, are off the beaten track a little bit, and you can go and find them. But I think there is a middle ground here. For instance, Mass Effect 1, you have to go and find all the side quests, and that's it. Mass Effect 2 is essentially a side quest in itself. Yeah, it's not really a huge part of the story, it's a side quest. Mass Effect 3 gives you too many side quests. It throws side quests at you all the time. Like, you never get away from side quests. You're running past people, you're not even talking to them, and you'll get a side quest just by them talking to each other. Whereas Mass Effect 1, you have to go and scope them out. Every side quest I was given in the game, because the game does give you 2 or 3 side quests to do, like Nasana Dantius and people like that. Every single one I was given, like the Luna mission, where you have to go and take down the AI, I would go and do, because I was like, oh, that's interesting, let's go do that. I want to do some side quests, that's cool. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't lace them into the plot very well. And you can tell that in the way that this game was a little bit rushed, in that they had to get it out the door, and that most of the side quests that are very interesting in this game you actually go and have to look for. Like, you have to literally pull things apart and explore the world and look for them. But here's another problem that many games get wrong, is that pacing of the main story. If the world's about to end, if the galaxy is about to be destroyed, I'm not going to go to a club to try and get this barmaid a job back. Yeah? Like, if a barmaid in a club needs her job back and she needs Shepard to go and do that for her, if I'm on a mission at the moment to go and save the galaxy, and it's literally about to, all life has been out, it's about to be extinguished, I'm not going to drop everything and try and get her a job back. Yeah. Mass Effect did this all the time. Like, for instance, sometimes I wouldn't go to Flux, which is the club, till like the end of the game when you've got to go meet Shepard. I've got to go meet Anderson. I wouldn't do it until I've got to go meet Anderson at the end of the game. So I would go there, and obviously I'd have this quest dropped on me to go and help this woman get her job back at the... And I'd just be like... you know, because Flux is like, it's out the way. You know, when you go into the Citadel, as you just seen in the playthrough, it's quite out the way. It's not actually... You have to go and, you have to make a point of going there. You don't just stumble across it. I think in later games, especially in like things like Dragon Age and things like that, BioWare got a lot better at lacing these side quests into the main story so that you naturally come across them. I think in a weird way, even though Dragon Age 2 gets a lot of bad press, it's actually the best game BioWare ever made for that. In that, you know, just running around the city, you automatically get these these side quests coming at you thick and fast, but in a controllable way. So when you pass somewhere, the game knows where you're about to be in the story. So at the very start of the story, you get more of the quests that are like, hey, I'm a barmaid, can you get me my job back? Sort of thing. You get that near the start of the story. Then near the end of the story, the side quests get a lot more serious as you're carrying on. Mass Effect doesn't do that very well at all. Mass Effect, for instance, you know, it's very immersion breaking running into the Flux, trying to get to Anderson so that he can unshackle the Normandy so you can go and take down Saren and stop this immortal race of mechanical squids coming back and annihilating all life in the universe and the galaxy. And you're stopped by a bartender who wants you to go and get a barmaid back to work there. It just, yeah, that's one thing Mass Effect doesn't do very well. So if you do play through it, I would suggest searching everywhere all the time. The game doesn't tell you to do that, and to its credit, you know, it's not a big deal. You know, it's my choice to not go and look for every single thing under the sun, and there will be a lot of players out there who will go and look for every single thing under the sun and will come across this content in the proper time. But the game doesn't give you that on a plate. You know, it's not mechanically put in place for you to come across the content at the right time, is what I'm saying. So number 5, combat. It exists. It exists. Combat, you know, for its time, and this is where the game has aged very, very poorly. And combat for its time, even at its time, was not good. I mean, this is the time when Gears of War and things like that were coming out, and so the combat in Mass Effect, even when it came out, was dated. It was very, very dated, and very, very backwards. The guns don't have any sort of recoil or feel to them. You know, the biotic powers are very finicky and how they can be used and if they're going to be used. There were many times in this playthrough where I was trying to use certain powers and they wouldn't fire properly. You know, it was just, yeah, it was there, and you can tell first and foremost that this was an RPG team's first 3D action game. You could tell that. That's not a big deal. I prefer RPGs anyway, which is why I would never give this game a huge thumbs down, because the combat isn't very good. But the combat isn't very good, and you know, it gets better with Mass Effect 2, but not that better. Let me put it that way. But yeah, that's all I've got to say on the combat, really. I mean, the actual, you know, the progression through the systems was very, very good for an RPG. You know, it was great. You know, the combat did its job. And yeah, I mean, I've got nothing else to say about it, and I don't think any review I've ever come across of this game has always been the same as well. They've always been, yeah, we've got nothing else to say about it. The combat exists. Psst, you know, that's how it is. Sixth thing is the shortening scope of the game. So this game has had a huge scope when it was first muted. You know, there were going to be, when people talk about games like Anthem and they say, you know, oh, BioWare's going away from its roots, it's doing online stuff, and it shouldn't be doing online stuff. How would you feel if I were to tell you that Mass Effect was originally going to have a very similar system in place? Mass Effect was originally going to have an extremely similar system to Anthem, in that you could play it with your friends. You could actually be online all the time. and you could play with your friends, and you could do things with your friends, and there would be online multiplayer as well. There'd be a whole multiplayer module on there that would help you out during the campaign. That got scrapped because of resources and time constraints. But yeah, that was originally going to be a plan for the game, and you can tell there was a whole world called Calliston, which you go to instead of Therum in the first Mass Effect game. And it actually appears in one of the trailers. If you go on the Mass Effect game and you just let the introduction run, on the menu, it will take you to a trailer for the game where they go to Calliston. They're going to Calliston, and it's outlining the choice of the game and how things are affected going forward. That world is completely cut from the game to save time and to save money. And so if a whole planet is cut from the game, you can tell that the shortening of scope here, and it's not the first game of its type to do this. Knights of the Old Republic 2 suffered similarly, and that was a huge shame. That's a shortening scope, anyway. One thing that was in the game, that was always supposed to be in the game, was the branching choices. And the branching choices really are something that is a staple of Mass Effect going forward, and it's one of the things that I love about it the most, is that your entire world state can be, or galaxy state can be completely different to a friend who's also got the same game. That's great. I didn't appreciate the fact that if you're not a total space Hitler, like if you're not a total person who's completely out of their minds, you can't really max out your Renegade, because there's Renegade and Paragon, of course. Good guy, bad guy. Not really good guy, but Dirty Harry and good guy. You can't really max out your Renegade score unless you kill the Rachni Queen and do all this stuff that makes no sense. The one thing I don't like about villains in video games a lot of time when you're afforded the chance to play one is that they can come across as arseholes, as just stupid people making stupid decisions for stupid reasons, and I don't like that. The one thing I loved about Fallout 4, and by the way, Fallout New Vegas is my favourite Fallout, but Fallout 4, the one thing I loved about it was the fact that if you wanted to be a bad guy, the game wouldn't really let you too much, but if you really pushed it, you could be. But it was understandable why this person was doing these dastardly things. He's lost his son, he's lost his wife, he's lost his entire world and his life that he had. So fuck everybody, I'm gonna take what's mine, I'm gonna make sure that I get what's mine when I'm coming through this game. And you can play it that way, if you really want to. Whereas in Mass Effect, only the certain choices that Shepard can make throughout the series are dumb. And BioWare have never been very good at writing bad guys if you're going to be playing one. I don't think any developer has really, and even Bethesda, they've not been very good at it either. But hopefully moving forward, that's something that they can actually get to grips with. So closing thoughts. As a game, it's fantastic. Mass Effect, when it came out, wasn't groundbreaking in terms of graphical style. It wasn't groundbreaking in terms of combat, but in terms of story, the way it presented, it was groundbreaking at the time. But it wasn't so much of a game changer, and I know lots of people refer to it as like an industry, the industry change when Mass Effect came out. It didn't. Mass Effect was just a great story, and a great story well told, and that's what BioWare used to be very good at, was great stories well told. And this one had branching storylines and things like that are going to carry on into the next few games as well. So I think that's just how you got to go into it, and how you got to appreciate it nowadays. Its legacy is that it spawned this franchise that became, so successful, and it essentially put the cap on BioWare's storytelling talent. In that, after Mass Effect 3, most of the talent that made things like Dragon Age Origins and the Mass Effect games left. So this was the magnum opus of that BioWare team, essentially. And hey, it starts off in a good way. It's a solid foundation, is what it is. Do not play it in isolation. If you're going to play the first one, play the second and third. Because, I swear, playing Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 makes Mass Effect better. Makes the original Mass Effect better. You look back at it with rose-tinted sunglasses. If you just play Mass Effect 1 and leave it, then you're going to be thinking, what was the fuss about? You will be thinking, what was the fuss about? So play them all. If you're going to play one, play them all. That's all my thoughts. That's what I was going to say in the credits. for the last episode of Mass Effect. But thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you guys a little bit later on.